I'm already so incredibly sweaty. I'm a Black Widow, baby. Ugh. Iggy Azalea is just so terrible. Like, it's upsetting. Hello friendships! Welcome back for another magical movie review. It's me, Molly, or Magic by Molly. We are continuing the Marvel Cinematic Universe series here on our magical movie review with da-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. That was supposed to be some kind of theme song, I don't know. But we are finally at the first Avengers movie. It's so exciting! Watching all of these movies up until this point is just hyping us up. This is it. This is the first film that really gets us excited about all the Avengers together. So, stick around until the end of this review to find out where the Avengers movie falls in line with my favorite of the MCU. Now, before we get too far ahead, make sure that you hit that thumbs up button and go ahead and subscribe and turn on notifications so that you can be alerted every time a magical movie review gets posted. That's a lot of words that I have to say. For those of you who are new around these parts or haven't watched a magical movie review before, I break things down into 4 major parts. First, we've got magical moments, which are things that bring us joy or just make us laugh about the movie itself. Then we also talk about enchanting efforts, which are moments that leave big question marks over my head or feel left undone or just not done very well. Then we also select a VMP, or a very magical person that wins the episode. And finally, we top it all off with my rankings of the movies so far in that series. I've tried to do a Black Widow bound today. Of course, you got to go with the faux leather jacket for Black Widow. I mean, that's basically her thing anyway. But of course I had to sneak in a Foo Fighters shirt here because she's definitely rock and rollin' badass. And if you don't think so, you are not badass. And then of course I put in a little red headband because of course she has red hair and I have none of that red hair. And I don't have a wig and it's too hot for that anyway. Alright, so magical moments. Diving right in, Black Widow, dressed up, love her. I think this is her first movie where she really shines. Of course, I loved her in Iron Man 2, one of the only good things to come out of Iron Man 2. Anybody that doubted that she could keep up with all these superhuman people and brainiacs with millions of dollars, you were definitely proven wrong. She is kick-ass, she holds her own. We definitely get a rich backstory from her within this film, especially with her interaction with Loki and with Hawkeye. So it definitely gives her a few more layers that we didn't get in the first film that we saw her in. But that's okay because this story is so rich for her. So number 1, love her. She's definitely one of my top Avengers, probably top 3 because I'm really bad at picking a number 1 anyway. Ironically, I love it when the Avengers fight each other. I think that's done on purpose because we come into this movie thinking, okay, you have this setup where you think all of these Avengers are gonna come together and just be like, yeah, let's go fight the bad guys. And that's just not how it is when we actually get down to it. And when you really think about it, in reality, when you bring a group of just such strong-headed people together, of course they're gonna butt heads. But it's almost like they're escalating the butting of the heads by making them duke it out and basically fight each other to the death. Like when Thor and Iron Man fight in the woods. That is one of the best fight scenes, in my opinion, between the Avengers themselves, like one-on-one with the Avengers. So I'm all for it, watching them fight each other, which you wouldn't think that you would be. You're rooting for the Avengers as a whole and you want them to get along and save the world, but you know, you also want them to fight and be like a family. Another thing that I was worried about coming into this movie was just the complexity of the plot. Just because I was a little bit scarred by Iron Man 2 having happened so recently with its crazy ass plot, or 50,000 plots that we're trying to keep track of. So I was like, dear Lord, we're gonna have all of these different Avengers and all of their specialness and individuality brought in, and we're gonna have another 100,000 plots to keep track of. I didn't feel that way when I watched this movie. It felt like we were getting a lot of different layers from each of the characters, not just Black Widow. I just love her, so I wanted to give her a shout out. It felt complex, but it didn't feel chaotic. That's the best way that I know how to describe it. I think they did such a good job of finding a way to take each of those individual layers and overlap them so that they complemented each other really well. So that was a surprising magical moment for me. And I think something else that's magical that contributes to it is all of the secondary characters that had been sprinkled through multiple individual Avenger movies are brought in, and so it kind of keeps some commonality in there. So Coulson and Fury, for sure. It allows us to have a starting place or a reset place when they're on the screen. So it's like, okay, I know that this is a dividing moment, or I feel at home here. I feel centered, and I think that's why Coulson's death was so brutal for me. It was so sad because we had learned to love him so much up until this point through our introductions of all the Avengers. He's been there for almost every single one. To lose him in such a tragic way was so sad, but so loving at the same time, because it hit all of the Avengers so hard, and it's sad that that thing had to be what brought them all together, which we saw with Fury and Hill. But I don't know, I really loved that sequence of them using this person that we had known throughout this entire process and we had considered a common cause or a common person, and the individual Avengers thought of him in the same way. So it felt just as much of a loss for us as it did for the Avengers, and our relationship with Coulson made it more relatable for us to be related to the Avengers emotionally in this situation. We're getting real deep on magical movie review. Of course, a bunch of magical moments ensue after that. The special effects are really good. The space manatees, which are those giant like things that fall through the hole in the sky, is what we decided to call them because that's basically what they look like. The funny one-liners, all of it is just so well thought out and well executed. So we could spend hours sitting here talking about magical moments for the Avengers. But what I will say as the last magical moment will be, starting with this movie in particular, Loki becomes my favorite villain in the MCU. He is so incredibly charming and funny, so it's easy to fall in love with him, and that's when you realize that it's too late and he's already started manipulating you, or manipulating the people around him that he knows he needs something from. I think he's definitely one of the smartest villains. He achieves his goal. He opens up this hole in the universe for people to start falling through. He doesn't quite get to the ultimate goal. He wins the battle. He doesn't win the war. I think it's just such a glorious defeat for him. And when he just gets smashed by the Hulk is just freaking hilarious anyway. So I'm here for it. I love Loki. I know a lot of people do too. So if you are also a Loki lover, like this video or comment down below. Now for enchanting efforts, I honestly didn't really write a whole lot down when I was watching the movie. In past movies, there have been really big, specific enchanting effort moments where I'm like, oh my god, I gotta write that down, or oh my god, that was confusing. It was refreshing in the Avengers to not really feel like I had to do that, especially even in magical moments. Like I felt very entertained by the movie to the point where like I kind of forgot that I needed to be writing things down. So there's only a couple things that I thought about retroactively or kind of just had a tiny question mark, but even then it's not as big as some of the previous ones. One of just like my big thoughts after the movie was over was I just realized that we actually didn't see the Incredible Hulk very much. Like, we saw Bruce Banner and we saw his wit and him getting along with Tony, which was kind of fun, but we didn't actually see the Hulk very much in this movie, where we get to see a lot of the other Avengers in their element. Fight scenes for the Hulk, I know it's different for him because then he becomes just destructive, but Hulk is such a popular character and he's so well loved that it was disappointing that we didn't get to see him as the big green guy more. Now, one of the other things that was just kind of a question mark for me was in the last fight scene, Hawkeye's up on the building, he's doing his bow and arrow thing, and at most, he probably has about 10 of those arrows in there in his quiver, and yet he easily fires off 30 to 40 that we see, and we assume that he shoots off at least 20 more when the camera's not on him in the fight. That has to be just movie magic, because where did he get all these arrows from? Or he runs out, or he realizes he's on his last one, and then he's like, oh shit, I gotta figure out something else to do. When in reality, that probably should have happened quite a bit ago. That's the only downside of having like a bow and arrow be your main weapon, is like I guess you could like go run towards the enemy and pick up some more versus a gun. You can't really put the bullets back in, but it just seems silly to me. Actually, that's really all I have for enchanting efforts. So let's move on to VMP. While Tony Stark did save New York by basically sacrificing himself, I'm gonna have to go with Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, for VMP. She calmed down the Hulk, so she saved a lot of lives on that helicraft from being destroyed. She saves Hawkeye, pretty much. She brings him back to life, and she's basically the sounding board, whether like nice or not about it, for all of the Avengers. So it's hard to like not have her be a part of everybody's plan, which I think makes her the VMP without anybody really realizing it. And I think that's what she's good at. She's good at kind of infiltrating and making herself essential without making it obvious, so that she can sneak in and out of situations. And of course, like, she's such a badass with Loki. Loki's trying to manipulate her. She gets him to believe it, and in reality uses some reverse psychology to then like manipulate him right back. Like, who wouldn't believe that? That's just badassery. I'm all for it. But Tony Stark as Iron Man can get an honorable mention for, you know, saving the planet, but they all did in their own way. So, with that being said, it may be pretty obvious, especially knowing the number of enchanting efforts that I have, and it was tough for me to come to this conclusion because I love Iron Man. I loved the first movie in the MCU so much. It really got me excited about Marvel, so it was hard to give this spot up, but having gone through these movies a couple times now and watching it in chronological order, so I'm gonna have to go with the Avengers as my #1 spot, then Iron Man, then Captain America the First Avenger, Thor, Captain Marvel, Iron Man 2, and The Incredible Hulk. So there you have it. I think that that would be a pretty obvious choice for most people too, especially just the first few movies are just so-so. It's a lot of plot setup, it's a lot of character building, a lot of intricate plot play and development, whereas before it was just so much information in all of these movies that it's nice to really start getting into the action part of it. And even more drama, as we'll see in the next couple of movies. Drop a comment below. Tell me where the Avengers falls in your list, or tell me what your favorite MCU movie is if you haven't seen it yet in our magical movie review and you're looking forward to that episode. I am gonna take a break for next week. I'm kind of using phase 1 as my first block, and then I'll be creating lots of content for the next phase of the MCU. Take that as an opportunity to go back and watch all the other MCU magical movie review episodes. As always, like, subscribe, turn on the notifications, and follow me on all the social medias so that we can be friends. Stay weird!